All right, we're going to try this again and again and again, as many times as it takes. I don't know if this has made any difference at all. Let's see what happens. And waiting for some responses from the chat here to make sure that everybody can see and hear me okay. I guess sometimes you just need to turn it off and back on again, right? It kind of looks crooked to me. I don't know why it's crooked. All right, everything looks good. Good to hear. Thank you guys for your help. I apologize for that. Not sure what that was all about. Let me just set this keyboard over here and get it out of the way. Now, yeah, it's a little dark. Not a very sunny day out today. All right, so again, my name is Cary Holzman, and I am a computer technician. I've got a couple decades of experience, and for those of you who don't know who I am, that's pretty much all you need to know, so we can get moving on this. If you've been following the channel, you will remember this computer right here. This is a Phenom 2, I forgot what it is, and it's a little bit loud. I think the power supply is the culprit to the loud fan noise that's coming out of it. And I see it's buffering on my side. Let's see what's going on here. We got some strange gremlins running around today. All right, let's try this again and again and again. Okay. What do you think? You think we're good for a while? All right, so this computer right up here, you may recall, I just did a video on, a live stream on. It's an AMD Phenom. It only had 2 gigs of RAM in it. I found some old DDR2 memory laying around, so I slapped 4 gigs of RAM in it, and it's pretty loud. I think pretty sure the power supply fan is the culprit. It's nothing wrong with it. It just spins really, really fast, and so it's really loud. And I'll be selling that machine, this one right here. If anybody wants it, you've got to be local in the Phoenix area. Also, that laptop I had, to be selling that, and then there's a couple of square, kind of the original LCD monitors that weren't rectangular, they're square. Anybody wants that stuff, drop me a message. You can send a direct message to me through YouTube, and we can talk about getting that to you, and just looking for reasonable offers. All right, so no, I'm not shipping anything to anywhere, because the cost of shipping is worth more than the computer's worth. Shipping a computer costs about $80, so the computer's not worth $80. So anyway, you got to be local to Phoenix. I'm not shipping it. Because these parts are very, very obsolete. So if you're looking for something to play around with, or you have a friend or a family member that just needs they're not power hungry, they don't need much in the way of power, the computer's fine, nothing's wrong with it. It's just really, really old. 4 gigs of RAM helps, but it's still slow. It's going to need a new power supply. In my opinion, it's too loud. Power supply runs fine, nothing wrong with it. I guess if you want to tolerate the sound of the fans, I'm accustomed to newer computers that are much quieter. So anyway, just if you're interested, send me your best offer in a private message here on YouTube, and I can meet you somewhere in the Phoenix area, and let's see. Okay, so looking at what we're going to do with it. This is going to be just a budget build. The gentleman doesn't have real high needs. He barely uses the computer as it is, but he doesn't want to have to buy another one for the rest of his life. So we want to build him something good, not too good, and something that's going to have a good warranty, so if anything happens to it, you know, he doesn't want to have to spend all this money again. It's actually under $500 for everything. Let me move this case. I'll show you what we've got here. Get this out of the way. Set that down here. Okay, so for our parts, as you can see, I've got the SanDisk 240 gig solid state drive. These are like $80 now, so 80 or 90, really good deal. His DVD drive in the old machine is IDE, so we have to get him one that's SATA. He absolutely needs it. We've got an EVGA 430 watt power supply. These are under $40. There's a new 80 plus rating called white. So you know you have bronze, silver, gold, platinum, titanium. Well, now below bronze there's white. So that's what this is. This is a 430 watt 80 plus white, which is great, considering the power supply in the other machine isn't power efficient at all. For the motherboard, we're using a GIGABYTE H110S2H motherboard with 8 gigs of DDR4 RAM. It's just 2133 memory. That's all it's going to use. There's 2 sticks of 4 for a total of 8. And then a Celeron. This is the newest Celeron, which is the G3950, which is 3 gigahertz. It's got 2 mega cache. Now this should be an interesting build in that we only have 7 parts, right? Case, power supply, optical drive, solid state drive. That's 4 parts. And then motherboard, CPU, and RAM. That's it. That's the whole build. We're going to move the data off of his old hard drive onto the new SSD, so his desktop will be the same. Just use a Cronus or Macrium Reflect for that. And what am I forgetting? I'm forgetting something. I was going to tell you something. I don't remember what it is. I see Jimmy SB4DES has contributed $5 to the page. Thank you, Jimmy. Please repost the video of you washing a keyboard in the dishwasher. Please, for the love of God, please. I wanna remake that video because it just didn't come out very good. I don't even know if I still have it. And if I do, it's going to be in standard definition because that was before I upgraded both the camera and the microphone. Remember, when I first started, I was just using a cheap SD camcorder and the in-camera microphone. But I will show another more updated video of that. I just haven't gotten around to it. If you guys want a better picture of the parts, let's get that up there. That should be the picture of the parts right now. And ideally, you can still hear me. Okay. And then I should be back. I'm still playing around with this Stream Deck. I don't know if you guys can see it here, but this is kind of a cool tool, and I'm not using it for Twitter or anything. A lot of it's not for Twitter, for Twitch and Twitter, but I'm just using it for OBS, and I'll slowly work my way into using more and more of it. So it's pretty cool. I just push a button and there's my picture. Push the button again, the picture goes away. So, I should be a button for me getting rid of the audio as well. It does work with Twitter. There's actually a button. I didn't make a mistake. I wanted to say Twitch, but you can configure it to also broadcast out to Twitter at the same time. Obviously, that's you don't need 15 buttons for Twitter, but it will do that. It's pretty cool. I don't use Hold on a second. Let me just check something here. I gotta get my keyboard to work. Yeah, okay. Oh, somebody just contributed $10. That just went right by. OG Gaming says, I'm very interested in having you build a gaming rig for myself. That's great, OG. Just once again, send me a private message here on YouTube. And then when I'm done broadcasting and I've got a moment to go through my messages, I will get back to you. I'd love to build a computer for you and anybody else in the United States. All right. And thank you also for the contribution. So let's see, we got about 279 people in the chat. Thank you everybody for joining. Let's get started with the build. We start with the instructions. They're completely pointless and they can go over there. I'm just going to start with installing the drives and power supply first. There's no real rule to what order you begin your build in. If I want to start with the motherboard, I can. If I want to start with any particular parts, you can start anywhere you want. This is the way I like to start. And we're going to begin by removing the 4 screws here on the back that hold the side panels on. So let's go ahead and do that. And when you put these down, be careful that you don't put them somewhere where you're going to bump into them, possibly dent or scratch them, because that will bum you out. There we go. Inside of the case, we've got a box with all of our hardware. A lot of people ask, where do the screws come from for mounting the motherboard and mounting the drives? That's going to come with your case. Sometimes people don't have these parts anymore, and there's not much you can do other than buy a new case. There are advantages also to upgrading the case. One of the reasons I'm not going to rebuild into the customer's old case is it has no USB 3 on it. Also, the old case is built pretty shoddily. It doesn't have very good cooling, and it's kind of echoey and loud. This case is a bit more solid. It's going to be dead silent when we're done. I think we may have a BIOS update issue. When you install the latest generation Intel CPUs onto a previous generation motherboard, the motherboard will require a BIOS update to see the CPU. So this gets to be a little bit of a catch-22 because you can't update the BIOS unless you can get the motherboard to turn on these consumer boards. Now on the higher end boards, like with Asus, they got the BIOS flashback for the X99, stuff like that. You can just flash the BIOS even without a CPU in the board, even without memory in the board. But on these cheaper motherboards, you have to have a working CPU, then you can update the BIOS, and then you can use the new CPU. I don't know which BIOS this motherboard has on it. It depends how long it's been sitting in inventory before it was shipped to me. The manufacturer is shipping them with the latest BIOS that works with the latest chips, but this motherboard may be 6 or more months old from sitting on a shelf somewhere waiting to be sold, and therefore may have an older BIOS that's not going to recognize the new CPU. If that happens, I'll show you how I cross that bridge. I'll just tell you in case it doesn't happen. I'm going to go grab another CPU out of another system, like I'll grab the one out of that M1 case you saw me build on before, pop it in there temporarily, flash the BIOS, take it back out, put the new one in. It's easy peasy. But this is why sometimes it makes sense to take something to a computer tech versus doing it yourself, because generally speaking, CPUs are not returnable, so it's not like you can just go buy one, use it to flash your BIOS, and take it back. You'd be better off taking it to the place where you bought it, having them flash it there for you, or avoid the whole situation and make sure that you get the latest motherboards with the latest chips. This, like I say, is a budget build. I think it's going to be a great system. I think it's going to operate much, much faster than this guy's ever seen. And I think he's going to be very happy for it, especially for the price. Okay, so let's see what we've got. So I start by removing, I should do this so you can see it, right? I start by removing this piece here. All the extra pieces and all the extra parts we've got left over, we're going to put all that in the empty motherboard box when we're done, so we have everything together. And someone's mentioning in the chat that the audio is out of sync. We can sit here and we can play back and forth with the video and audio for the next 45 minutes until it's, you know, manually adjusted. I think most of us want to get on with the build. What do you guys want to do? Everybody's fine. All right, so if it's out of sync, you might lower your resolution because it may be on your end, or reload the page. Hit the refresh button, let the page reload. All right, everybody wants to continue? Let's continue. Installing the optical drive is very, very easy. All we're going to do is slide it in from the front. Everything that's accessible from the front goes in from the front. It doesn't go in from inside. And that's just going to slide in like so, and it should lock right into place. There's a little catch here. I can manually kind of egg it on. There we go. And that's locked in. I mean, it was that easy to install. We can secure it with a screw, which I am going to do. And in this bag, or one of these bags of screws, there's going to be some small fine thread screws. This is an empty box we don't need. And let's see. I like to put one on each side, just so that the drive doesn't get pushed in on one side or the other if the customer is a little heavy-fingered. If that's a thing, it's a thing. So I'm just going to put one in right here. And I am completely blind by this light over here. Let me step around so you can see me do the other side. That one's going to go right here. And that's our optical drive in position, as you can see. Nice and flush. The colors match. Everybody's happy. All right. The next thing, as I continue to walk around here, I think I am going to grab my Lazy Susan. Let me grab that real quick, because that makes life a lot easier for both of us. And I just have it sitting back here. It's a little dusty. Let's get the dust off of that. Thought I thought of everything. All right, there we go. Let's put it on here. That way I can spin it around. Ah, that's better. All right. So now we're going to do the solid state drive. You know, it's amazing to me that these solid state drives, just a few years ago, you practically had to be rich to own one. And now they just put them in a package, a clamshell package, and hang them on a shelf as though as though you were buying, one of the impulse items at the grocery store. Love it. So getting the package open, however, may be another issue. So let's grab some scissors. Anybody can build a system like this, and I really want to encourage you to, if you're thinking about building your own system, stop thinking about it, start doing it. You can do it. Over at the Facebook fan page, you can get free build advice and free support help if things aren't working right. There are volunteers there available to help you. Please do not ask me directly for help unless you're a customer, because, as you can imagine, I get more requests from help from strangers on the internet than you can possibly imagine. I do try to reply to everybody and let them know. And sometimes when I reply to them, they get all angry at me because they think I'm mean. But, imagine 15 people all wanting your attention at the same time. So I just ask people to be considerate of that. And that's what the fan page is for. That's why it was made. And the volunteers there are unpaid volunteers. They're just helping, so please be nice to them. There's our solid state drive right there. And it's going to go any of these 4 slots right in here. I like to put it in close to the motherboard, or close to the what's called the motherboard tray towards the back. That keeps the cabling looking cleaner. And that's just going to slap in right like that, and it'll click into place. There it is. It's locked in. I can also put a screw in there to secure it down. Actually, I think it would take 2. Right here and right here. But it's not going to go anywhere. And that movement isn't going to hurt it because there's no moving parts. It's a solid state drive. Finally, we can put the power supply in. And the power supply, oh boy, I need something else to open these boxes. I have jokingly said in the past, and I will continue to say it so long as it continues to remain true, and that is it's often harder to get the parts out of the box than to actually install the computer or build the computer. All right, here we go. I really like these EVGA power supplies. A lot of people are really overbuying on power supplies. Most people don't ever need more than 850 watts on the most outrageous systems. There are very few exceptions to the rule. For this customer, 430 watts is going to be probably at least twice what he needs, if not more. Instruction manual can go over there. And even though this power supply is relatively inexpensive at just, what I say, about $37, it's got a 3-year warranty on it. Those are the screws. We're going to use those screws instead of the one that came with the case. The ones that came with the case will work, but if you want everything to match up real nice and pretty, if looks matter to you, I suggest you use the ones that come with the power supply unless the ones that come with the power supply are a different color than your case. Like if these screws were silver, I wouldn't want to use them because they're not going to look right. We've got the main power cord here, and that's going to go in the box with the instructions and all the spare parts. The customer's going to need that to turn the computer on. I check the bottom of the power supply to see, sometimes they put a little sticker over their logo. It's like a protection to keep it from getting scratched in shipping. You don't have to remove it, it's just something that bugs me. And it's a good habit to get into. This one's on really good too. There it goes. I always install these power supplies with the fans facing down. There's 2 reasons for that. One is if I put the fan facing up, my cables are all going to come out towards this side of the computer case, which is ugly. I want the cables to be hidden as possible, so I want everything is up against this back tray as much as possible. Also, I would much rather bring cold air in from outside to cool this power supply. A lot of people think all fans blow. This fan does not blow. This fan sucks. Make your own jokes. And what ends up happening then, if you put this computer, and many computers, modern computers, onto carpeting, you end up with basically a really expensive vacuum cleaner. If you do have to put the computer on carpeting, just get some blocks or some books. Just give it some breathing room, you know? How would you like it? So anyway, all this fan's going to do is it's going to suck air in here and it's going to blow the air out through here. None of this is going into the computer. So I'm going to go ahead and just set that in here. There's a little ridge. It's going to slide right underneath that ridge. Push it to the back. And then I push it forward, and I'm going to line up these holes in each corner. I have seen people put 3 screws on one side and 1 screw on the other. It's 1 screw in each corner. Now there's 4 screws and 8 holes. Why are there 8 holes? The reason for that is 1 screw is offset. That's so you can turn the power supply upside down if you need to. Some configurations, for some people, prefer that fan to be in the up position. And if you do that, then this offset screw down here has to be offset over here. So it's very logical. So we're not using this hole, we're using this one. We're not using that hole, we're using this one. And it's very easy to confuse the holes for vents with the holes for screws. But if you look carefully at them, you'll see that the holes that are intended for screws are they're bored out. They have threads. So let's go ahead and lock this into place. You'll see I don't tighten the screws all the way down quite yet, and the reason for that is so I can wiggle the power supply around to get everything lined up, and then once all the screws are started, I know they're lined up properly, and then I can torque them down. There's our last one right there. Now the torque setting on this screwdriver is set to 3. And I like to torque the power supply down a little bit more than that, so I just turn it by hand. You should absolutely, and it should be required, that you use a magnetic screwdriver when you work on a computer. There's a lot of people out there that still think magnets shouldn't be around computers. That's back from the old days when we used floppy disks. We don't use floppy disks anymore, and you can damage your motherboard if you drop a screw onto a trace. I'll tell you something else I've seen happen. I've seen people put their power supplies in upside down, and then they drop a screw and it goes right down inside the power supply because, well, think about it. So just something to be aware of. I just want to put these other screws back in this bag so I don't lose them. And it makes picking up the screws real easy too. There we go. I like to keep my work area nice and clean. I don't want to knock anything off accidentally. I only want to do it on purpose. So that's the first part of the build. You're halfway done. That's it. You've installed the optical drive, the solid state drive, and the power supply. They're very easy to do. As you can see, anybody can do that. I want to come back around so you can see what I'm doing. I have a habit of wanting to work on the other side of the counter, and then you guys can't see what I'm doing, which then defeats the purpose of the video. These are all the front port umbilicals, and this is what's used. These cables here, you see how they're going up? Well, they're going to the USB, audio, and reset and power button. That's what feeds those. And they just tie these up out of the way with a wire tie. The thing about a wire tie is it's got wire in it. So you don't want to reuse these inside of your computer because over time they become brittle and break, and then you have a piece of wire, which conducts electricity, floating around in there, and it could short something out and you know, completely damage your computer. It's not an RMA issue, it's your fault. So be aware of that, and use these nylon zip ties if you want to tie anything up. Nylon zip ties are what you want to use. Any wire ties, even if it's on a fan you're not using, take the wire ties off and replace them with nylon zip ties. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this aside because now it's time for us to prep our motherboard. Let me get this cable out of here. So to prep the motherboard, we need the RAM and the CPU, and this is, you can see close-ups of that, and that's our RAM. There's our CPU. There's all the specs on the CPU. And let me just move that over there. Let's put that over there. Back in the day, we used to have to put everything on the board. We used to have to put each RAM chip on individually. We used to have to, you know, if you had a network card that had to be added, a sound card had to be added. All this stuff is built on to the board now, and the memory is sold in inline memory modules, so they're already mounted. All you gotta do is pop the memory in. And now before I open this up and before I begin my motherboard prep, and before I forget, there's one last step to the case prep, and that's putting the I/O shield in. Now the I/O shield is unique to the motherboard and therefore comes with your motherboard. And I just need to once again grab the scissors I just put away. And let's get this opened up. And the way this is going to install with most cases, and it depends on your case, but the vast majority of cases installs with the keyboard holes up. Not all motherboards have the PS2 ports for keyboards, and you go, well, how do I know? Then the little holes here on the bottom, that's for your audio, those always go to the bottom. unless you bought one of those cases that's designed to be different, where this piece is down here, be down in the opposite corner, and everything mounts upside down. But anyway, so I'm going to mount that in here, and it's going to go in from the inside, and it's just a friction fit. All I have to do is line this up, make sure the fan cable's out of the way. That's the part that kind of makes it difficult. You don't want to pinch the cable. And then pop in each corner. A lot of people stop early. They get 3 corners in and they think they've got it all in. So you want to check all 4 corners and make sure they're all in. And that is our I/O shield in, and that garbage can get out of the way, and I can put my scissors back again. Okay. Now, when it comes to prepping the motherboard, we're going to take the motherboard out of the box. There's some cardboard here I don't need. This is all we have for an instruction manual. There's not much here. It's pretty useless. We have our driver disk. We'll get to that later. And then we have the SATA cables for the optical drive, which I'll get to a little bit later. But this is the now empty motherboard box that I'm going to put all the spare parts in. But I'm just going to set it right there for now. I'm going to now take the motherboard out of its anti-static bag. This is a good time to ground yourself. The best way to ground yourself is to either wear an anti-static strap that goes around your wrist and goes to the case, or to just keep touching the case. A lot of people make a big deal about static discharge. You don't want to work on carpeting. I'm here in the kitchen because the kitchen is naturally an anti-static environment. Unless your kitchen has carpet. Most don't. Most kitchens do not have carpet. If yours does, I would suggest you build somewhere where there isn't carpet, or wear the anti-static strap when handling your motherboard and the motherboard components. None of the components we've installed are affected by static, so we didn't have to worry about that until now. You do not want to plug this computer in, even with the power supply off, thinking, well, now I'm grounded. That is an earth ground, and it's very dangerous to work with an earth ground that you're connected to. You can do research speaking to electrical engineers. Don't go to some yahoos on Yahoo. Don't listen to those folks on Reddit. Listen to electrical engineers who will warn you, and they will tell you that's a very dangerous and foolish thing to do, and it does you no benefit. What you want to do is you want to be on the same electrical level as your environment. And by touching the case, that's what you're doing. You're putting yourself on the same level. And that's what's going to prevent any electrostatic discharge. The second thing that's going to prevent that is you're going to handle the parts the same way you see me handle the parts, which is I always grab the parts by their edges, like so. And you'll see the bottom of the board has a lot of pointy solder points, and they will cut you, they will scratch your counter. So what I like to do is use the motherboard box, which I just set down here, and that's going to be our little workbench. Some people say you should not set the motherboard on top of the anti-static bag, and this is where education versus conspiracy. The anti-static bag works as a Faraday cage, and it doesn't really matter if you know what a Faraday cage is or not. But you do know what a cage is. If you don't put something in the cage doesn't work as a cage. If you take a criminal and you put him on top of the jail, the cage, it's not going to hold him. So when the motherboard manufacturers tell you that you shouldn't build on the anti-static bag, what they're saying is you'll have no electrostatic protection unless the motherboard is inside the bag. It's got to be in the cage. It's not dangerous. As long as you follow the anti-static procedures that I've already explained, it doesn't matter if you build on it or you don't. It's irrelevant. But leave it to the internet to find something petty that they're wrong about. Because ignorance is is the excuse. They don't openly say it, but there's a rapper, B.O.B., who started a GoFundMe page needs $220,000 because he wants to launch his own satellites to prove that the Earth is flat. This is what happens when you don't get a proper education. So ideally, you don't have to spend any money if you watch videos like mine where I show you real world techniques, which isn't to say I know everything, but there's some things that certainly make sense when somebody says the Earth is flat. You understand that person lacks proper education. It's not an insult. It's just, before you scream the sky is falling, maybe a little education would be beneficial to you and everybody you're attempting to panic. But enough of me on my high horse. Let's get the CPU out of the box. We got 363 in the chat. Hey everybody, welcome to the chat. Thanks for joining me on this live stream. Doing a budget PC build if you're just joining us. I love how this box just came out upside down on here when this came out. Well, I guess that's not bad. I'm used to the fan just falling out, but Intel has changed their packaging now so that the fan doesn't fall out like it used to. We've got instructions and a Go Faster sticker right here that you can put on your case to make it go faster. That can all go over there. The CPU fan, and I'm going to say this nice and slow. In fact, let me get up close. This is really important. I don't want you to miss it. The CPU fan already comes with thermal compound applied. Do not touch this thermal compound. It needs to be as clean as possible. You do not want any contaminants from the oil on your skin to dust and other particles, or it will affect the efficacy of the thermal paste. Do you see this? It's thermal compound. This is what it comes with. You do not apply any thermal compound to an OEM fan or even an OEM cooler, any cooler, from even a third party where it's already applied. We clear on that? Thermal compound is already applied. Okay. How come he didn't use any thermal compound? Where's the thermal compound? This guy doesn't know what he's doing. He didn't use any thermal compound. Can't believe this guy has a YouTube video. Sorry, I have a little issue. All right, so here's the board. Here's our chip. Here's our fan. Let's see if I can move that camera and give you a close-up and show you what I'm doing here. All right, it's going to get a little rocky, guys. Hope nobody gets seasick. Here we go. Do, 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 do. Let's see if we can get closer. Let's get closer. Oh yeah. There's the money shot. Okay. And let's flip this around the other way so I can see what you guys are seeing. Everybody can see okay? You got a close enough shot there for you? We good? Everybody's on the same page? Everybody happy? Okay. I think we're all happy. Now, to install the CPU, you'll see there's a little plastic cover right here, and that's to protect all the little pins that are under here. The reason it's called an Intel socket 1151 is because there's 1151 pins. Now, on older Intel CPUs and on all AMD CPUs, the pins used to be on the bottom of the chip, but as you can see, the chip is now just these little flat, what are called landings. There's just little tiny copper dots across the whole bottom of the CPU here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the CPU out of the case. You'll see the little plastic case here. which is an anti-static case, and I'm going to touch the computer case one more time, make sure I'm grounded. There we go. So there's a lip right here. I'm going to take that lip, put my thumb under it, and it's going to lift up the top of this plastic. Now inside of this little plastic container, there's an indentation on each side. That's for you to stick your fingers in and grab the CPU by the edges. We're grabbing by the edges because if we have any static buildup in us, we don't want to discharge it into our chip. Also, this is the part that the thermal compound is going to touch, and we don't want that to have our finger oils or any other contaminants where it will affect the efficacy of what? The thermal compound, which is where? Pre-applied on the fan that came with the CPU. On the other side of the CPU, we have 1151 landings. They're very delicate. Or they're not delicate, they're sensitive. So I don't want my finger oil on those either. It could interfere with the connection. Going back to the front of the CPU. Here we go, so you guys can see it. There are 2 notches, one on each side, that ensure that this can only go in its socket in one direction. Do not force anything. Do it exactly as you see me do it. If you struggle, you're working too hard and doing it wrong. It's very simple. The pins that we're going to set this in are underneath this plastic cover. They are extremely delicate. You do not want to bend one of those. Here's how we do it. Right here, there's a latch. My thumb is on it. I'm going to push this latch down and away. And then I'm going to lift it up, and this whole lid is going to come up. You see that? Now, with the letters on the CPU, with the words on the CPU, facing the same direction as the words on the motherboard, see here, there's words here, there's a notch in each corner, there's also a little white arrow right here and a little gold arrow in the same corner. Those are going to line up. There's lots of different ways to line this up. It's only going to fit in one way. Again, look at how I'm holding it. I like to set it in on one side with the notch, like so, and then I take it as far down as I can take it, and I let it go very gently. It hasn't properly seated. I just give it a little nudge, and it's now in its socket. I can actually grab the top of this heat shield and try and twist it, and it doesn't move. Now, to make this connection between those pins and those landings, we lower the lid back down. And you see it's got like a little groove right here. Well, it's going to go underneath this screw. And so when I slide this lever forward, and this lever is going to have a lot of resistance now. You got to put a little muscle into this. I'm going to push this lever down and put it back underneath that slot right there. And when I do that, this plastic lid should pop up all on its own. Let's see what happens. Push down. And look at that, just like I said. Now again, without touching the CPU, I don't want my finger oils on it. Lord knows where my fingers have been. I'm going to pick this up and I'm going to put it in the motherboard box. The reason I'm not throwing this away is if this motherboard should have to go back for any reason to the manufacturer for warranty, and I ever have to take that CPU out for any reason, you must cover those pins, because they are extraordinarily delicate. If you look at them too hard, you could bend them. Okay, maybe not that delicate, but the manufacturers would have you believe that. So protect yourself and keep that cover. It costs you nothing to keep it. Now, when it comes to installing our fan, I do not like that Intel has placed the sticker on here. I wish Intel gave me the sticker to place myself, because I want to put this fan in this direction so that my sticker faces the same direction as all the other wording. However, if I do that, look at where the power cable's coming out. They've wrapped the power cable up here, so let me untangle the power cable. Let's take this out. My power cable's coming out here. The problem is my fan plugs in back. Let me turn this around. My fan plugs in here. So if I were to plug this cable in all the way over here, which is where it goes, I got to turn it around the right. It's got little grooves on the connector, so it can only go on one way. And it says CPU fan, and you'll see that the plug is white and the socket is white, and those are going to plug together. But now look at what's happened. Now my cable is going over my fan. And you might not think that's a problem until the computer moves and then this gets caught in your fan, and now your fan can't turn. And you're wondering why your computer's running hot. But man, will it be quiet. So logically, I want to turn this around. Well, see, some of my compound already came off, which is fine, no harm. And we're going to turn this around. And I'm going to set it here. Some people think you need to do something special with these little plastic towers. You do not. You do not. There's a little arrow on here. And the arrow that you see on here points the opposite way. And the reason for that is if you ever want to take this off, you have to turn this post and then pull it up. That's how this comes off. And it won't go back down and lock in again until you turn it back the opposite way of the arrow. I've seen a lot of first-time builders really overthinking things, and they think you've got to twist this and pull on it or whatever, and they're wrong. You make sure that the arrows, as they come out of the box, are in the opposite direction of where they're pointing, and then you're going to use your thumbs, and you're going to push down on any corner you want. Just pick a corner. And then do the opposite corner, which means going to the angular side. Push it down until it clicks. And then there's no order to doing the last two because obviously it'll always be opposite of the last two that remain. That ensures that your CPU heatsink is on level, it's flat. All right. Now, when it comes to this leftover cable, it can still get caught in the fan. So what I do is I grab one of these nylon zip ties that come with the computer, and I'm going to just take this like so. See how far down I can go with this. Here we go. Well, no, see, I don't even want that part to potentially be part of hit my fan. This is easier to do now than before you mount it into the case, so that's why I like to get this part done and out of the way. Now, I'm not going to tighten it too much. I want to make sure that I've got everything lined up the way I want it, and then I can pull on it and tighten it. Much cleaner, right? Then I'm going to grab my wire cutters. I'm going to cut this little pigtail off. There we go. Now that's got the CPU mounted properly onto our board. Now we go to the RAM. Now this motherboard has two RAM sockets, and you can see them here. The RAM sockets have retention levers. Older boards actually have them on both sides. This side here doesn't move. The reason this side doesn't move is if we were to add a discrete graphics card, we don't have to add graphics to this system because this system, the CPU has built-in video. If you have an AMD Ryzen, even if your motherboard, like this motherboard here, see how this motherboard has built-in video here? We've got the VGA, DVI, I think there's an HDMI under there too. Yeah, HDMI right there. Some AMD motherboards are compatible with Ryzen and the previous AMD generation. None of the Ryzen CPUs have graphics chips built into them. Intel does. That makes the Intel a better bargain for somebody who doesn't need a discrete graphics card. The Intel actually comes out to be less money, the equivalent Intel. So this Intel chip is not just the CPU, it's a GPU as well. So if you buy a Ryzen CPU, you will have to buy a video card. If you try and build your computer without one, you'll find you get no video and it doesn't seem to work. Now to install our RAM, which is what I was talking about before I got distracted, We have these 2 sockets. Some motherboards have 4. You'll need to refer to your motherboard manual if you've got more than 2 to figure out which you're supposed to use if you're not going to fill them all up. In our memory, we've got 2 sticks of RAM and we have 2 sockets to put them in. These don't move because there's room for a graphics card right here. And if these were to open up, they'd get in the way of the graphics card. That's why motherboard manufacturers stopped making those movable. Capiche? You got me? You picking up what I'm putting down? I think you are. I think we're good. All right, so here I've got the RAM. RAM is getting expensive. This was $69.99 on sale, plus tax. I think it was $76 for 8 gigs of DDR4. Here in the package, we're just going to take the RAM out. It's just on a little plastic container here, a little clamshell that just stick your thumb in there and it should just pop right open. There we go. And it doesn't matter which one of these you want to grab first, just don't bend the memory out of the container. Bend the container. See what I'm saying? Bend the container. That way you can get the memory out. And this side of the socket has these little retention levers that we're going to open up. Can you see that? Just like so. They're normally in a closed position. The memory will not go in that way. You have to open this side up. There's a little notch in the memory, and there's a notch in the socket. The notch has to line up or the memory will not seat. That means you've got to turn the memory around. So this is wrong. This would be right. Start by placing the memory straight into the tracks, gently. And then, when you make sure that it's all straight, use your thumbs, push down on one side, and then the other side. And you'll see the retention lever close. I'm going to grab the remaining memory module from the package. We're going to do it again. Watch closely. Make sure you're in the grooves of the track. Don't use a whole lot of force here. You want to make sure it slides in. Watch this lever when I push down. I'm going to push down this side first, and then I'm going to push down this side. Nothing moves on this side, but you'll still hear a click. Huh? What do you think? That's it. You've prepped the motherboard. That's all there was to it. You've installed your CPU, your heatsink, your fan, your thermal compound, and your RAM. You did it all yourself, just like that. Very, very, very simple. Now, let me move the camera back. So, get ready for a little ride here. Hope you don't get nauseous. Here we go. Okay, we should be back. That should be happy. And let's check in on the chat room. How's everybody doing in the chat room? Carrie, can we get some admins in here? We've got trolls. Well, David, ask and you shall receive. David is now a moderator. David, please be nice to people. I really appreciate my moderators who don't get power hungry. And I appreciate your help. If somebody's rude, put them in timeout. If they're rude a second time, kick them out. That's the rules. I just realized in the box with the memory, got some Go Faster stickers. I don't even know where that's supposed to go. They're a really odd shape. Who would want that? That's just ridiculous. Is it supposed to go this way, or is it supposed to go... I guess it's a snake, right? So those would be the eyes. I don't know what that is. How about you guys keep your stickers and take 5 cents off the price of the memory? That's something I could use. All right. Now, what are we doing? When you see me leaning in like that, that's me looking at the comments in the chat. I'm not missing anything dramatic. So, get back to the build. Installing the motherboard into the case. Oh, sorry. More junk. This is a good time to untangle all of your umbilical cables. If the way your computer looks on the inside is important to you. If the computer's got a cleaner build on the inside, it'll be easier for you to work on in the future if you ever have to upgrade or diagnose anything or replace anything. Also, you're more likely to show it off. You know, before I got braces and had all my teeth fixed, I never smiled. And now that I have, I smile a lot more because I'm proud of it. You know, it was a lot of pain and a lot of money. And I think if you do the same with your cable management, you'll be more prone to wanting to show it off. And so you should, right? You should be proud of it. I also want to encourage you to share your builds. If you've already done a build or you're planning to do a build, take pictures of it and post them on the Facebook fan page. Tell people, you know, here's the components. This is what I chose. This is the case, the motherboard, the RAM, power supply, drives, and this is why I selected these parts. And this was the build process, or this was easier than I thought, or this part was harder than I thought. It helps your fellow enthusiast out in setting their expectations accordingly. And also, people that are watching this video are of all different age ranges. You know, we've got preteens to seniors and everything in between. And so when you post your build, the people that are in your age group are going to feel like they can relate to you better. Like if you can do it, then they can do it because they can relate to you. Same with your culture or your country. When people, as much as I try and show just how easy this whole process is, the fact remains that when people can identify with somebody else more closely, they're more likely to be inspired by it. And why not show off your build anyway? I mean, aren't you proud of it? And so if you're planning a build, take a picture or take a little video with your camera, put it up on YouTube. I will gladly share it. In fact, if you make your own little videos and you give me permission, I will share them right here on my channel so that you can have a bigger audience, encourage people to subscribe to your YouTube channel, and help inspire people all over the world. Is that too altruistic? I just think it's cool. Now, in the case, you'll see I've laid the case down. It's flat here with this side, with the I/O shield facing down. The case has these little motherboard standoffs that are already pre-installed. Not all cases have them pre-installed. One of the things I like about the Corsair 200R is I won't have to move or install or change the location of any of the pre-installed standoffs. They're already exactly where I need them to be. That may not be the situation if you buy a different manufacturer's case, and I just want you to be aware of that. One of the most common mistakes a first-time builder makes is they don't check the location of those standoffs. If a standoff were to be somewhere where there is not a mounting hole in the back of this motherboard, it can short the motherboard out, your system may not turn on, and further could permanently damage the board. Again, that's not a warranty issue. Look at how I'm handling the motherboard. I'm picking it up and holding it by the heatsink. This assures that I'm not touching any components. There can't be accidental electrostatic discharge. It's a very safe and secure way to hold the board. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this board with my other hand, with the I/O ports facing you, also facing the back of the case. I'm going to line these ports up with the holes in the I/O shield. It's going to go in this way. I'm going to put this end in first, and then I'm going to set it in right? You see the angle I'm holding on? And I'm going to set it in like that. Once I get these parts lined up with their holes, they go in, forward, and then down. And one of the motherboard standoffs here has a post. And that post is going to go through one of the mounting holes here, and it's going to hold that board in place while I use the included screws that came with the case to secure the motherboard into position with the remaining mounting holes. So here we go. Make sure that your fan cable is out of the way. You don't want to pinch that cable. Make sure you don't have your umbilical cables or your power supply cables. Just get them all out of the way. The bigger your motherboard is, this is a pretty small motherboard. This is micro ATX, which is going to look pretty small in this case. But the benefit is it's going to run nice and cool, and it's going to have a lot of room to get your hands in there without worrying about, you know, cutting your hands up really bad, or you know, having really tight things having a tight fit, making things harder to fit. That makes your build easier. It also means that if you want to upgrade in the future to a full-size ATX motherboard, you don't have to change your case. Or if you want to upgrade to another micro ATX or even mini ITX, you still don't have to change your case. That's the beauty of the Corsair 200R. And the 200R is not alone in that ability, but it's just something I want you to keep in mind. Now, once again, line the ports up with the holes. And my fan cable just fell in the way again, so let me move the fan cable one more time. Line it up. You see, can you see it lining up there on the... You know what, let me give you a close-up, because you can't really see anything else anyway. So let's get you a zoom in on this part right here. This is critical that you line these holes up properly, right? So I'm going to just take the board out. We're going to put the board back in so you can see what I'm doing. Line it up, push the board forward, and then push the board down until it seats onto the post. And then check to make sure that all of these ports are lined up properly. I'm going to just pause here a minute. I do see that it's buffering. Okay, you guys should be able to see okay, everybody should see everything good now, right? Okay. So we're going to do this again because this is live, we have to deal with little technical issues like that. Not much I can do about it. You guys can blame YouTube for that. So once again, to install the motherboard, I'm going to line up the ports with the holes, pushing the motherboard forward. Once I see that the ports have gone into the holes, I'm going to push the board forward and then push the board down, and then it seats. Everybody see that okay? Just making sure everybody can hear me. Yeah, sound is good. Everything's good. And because I enjoy doing this so much, I'm going to do it one more time just because it's just so easy. It's not a big deal. This is the board out. When I put the board in, I want to make sure that the ports go in first. Then I'm going to push the board forward and down. We can check and make sure that everything here is lined up properly before we secure it. Sometimes these holes here, your speakers and such, can be offset a little bit, so just double check that. Make sure that your USB and your Ethernet cables are all going to be accessible through the holes. Everything looks good. Yes, mentioning in the chat room, they're talking about grounding tags. If there are grounding tags, be very careful. You don't want to bend those down. They will block your ports. Now, let's go ahead and pull this back out and give you back to the wide view. There we go. And we've got a bunch of screws. Oh, that's garbage. We've got a bunch of, oh man, where's my head? Hold on. Hate it when that happens. I didn't zoom out far enough. That's zoomed out too far now. All right, let me try that again. Do I have a head? Yes, it's there. Good. All right, now I'm going to secure the motherboard with the screws, which I have. These are fan screws. We're not adding any fans to this build. These are the screws I want. These are other fan screws. These are motherboard standoffs for larger motherboards. We don't need those. And then these are the fine threaded screws, which we are done with. I'm going to put all those screws in this box when I'm done. I throw them because it's funny. It's theatrical. Don't freak out. I wouldn't want that guy to build a computer for me because he throws the parts around. All right, so these are the coarse threaded short screws. You want to make sure you use the right screw. If you try and use the fine threaded screws in these motherboard standoffs, they won't tighten. They'll just spin and spin and spin and spin, and your motherboard will just fall out. That's not good. How are you going to explain that to the tech guy at Best Buy? All right, so we're going to just tighten down these screws, or put these screws in rather. No particular order. I got to unlock my screwdriver. I still have it locked from when I installed the power supply. Oh, wait a minute. Wait just a minute. It appears I got to take the motherboard back out. It appears that Corsair has made a liar out of me. Okay, let me show you what's going on. Let's bring this up here, and just when you thought everything was going like it was supposed to and there wasn't going to be any embarrassing moments, this had to happen. Of course it had to happen. Dun dun dun. Let's zoom in here so you can see what I'm going to do. All right, this is the inside of the case. And somewhere on the floor I threw these standoffs that I just discovered I have to use them. Whoops. Okay. What's happening is this motherboard actually needs a mounting standoff. Well, gosh, I think it's, you see there's two holes right here? Can you guys see these two holes? Well, there's two holes right here, and then there's one over here. And I need to take these standoffs, and I need to add both standoffs. I need to put one here. This may not be the best view in the world, but I'm kind of doing this backwards so you guys can, I'm trying to give you guys a view. Okay, so I just started that one, and the other one should be directly, is it directly across? Yeah, it should be directly across, which would be right here. I think that's right. I don't think it goes down here. Depends on the motherboard. It looks like on this board they're straight across from each other. Now these are 5 millimeters. And I have a socket here in my toolbox. Here we go. This is my socket wrench. It's just a standard 5 millimeter socket. This ratchets, which makes my life a little easier. And I'm just going to tighten those down. So not only do you want to make sure you don't have a standoff where there's not a mounting point, you do want to make sure that the opposite is true, that you do have a standoff where there is a mounting point. Don't tighten these down too much or you'll strip out the threads and they will never tighten again. Now, there are also other standoffs surrounding the outside of this motherboard. Leave them alone. We don't use them. They're not interfering with anything. They're not touching anything. I'm not touching you. So they're fine. You might need them in the future if and when you ever upgrade your motherboard. Okay. Now, we can set the case back down. And let me, since we're zoomed in, let's go down here and you can see me do this again. We're going to put that motherboard back in because you guys like that instant replay. This is like your favorite part of the build based on what I'm seeing in the chat room. So we'll grab the board. We're going to make sure the fan cable's out of the way there. Hold the fan cable out of the way. We'll line up the ports first. Push the motherboard forward and down. There we go. Look at that. No big deal to correct our errors. No big deal. The world didn't end. We didn't ruin any parts. Simple little things like this. Don't have to freak out. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. Now I'm going to do something crazy. I'm going to pick this case up very carefully because the motherboard, nothing's holding that motherboard in right now. And I'm going to set it back up right. And then I'm going to adjust the camera so you guys can see the next step. So we can zoom it out just a little bit there. Okay. All right. Everybody still with me? We all good? Video's nice and clear. Audio's good? Yeah? Now, using the short, coarse threaded screws that are specifically used for installing 3.5-inch desktop hard drives and the motherboard. It's traditionally the way cases come. Not all cases do, but the Corsair cases are all the same that way. I'm going to step around here so you guys can see. And it doesn't matter where we start. This was the mounting point I was trying to use before. There was nothing to screw into because there was no standoff. And I'm going to go ahead and just secure that down. There, I don't have to worry about the motherboard falling out anymore. I can breathe again. And then we're going to go do the other side. Again, there's no order here, just whatever. There's the other one. You might want to just start them, you might want to not tighten them down in case you need to shift the board around. Don't let my overconfidence give you the wrong impression. If you've never built a computer before, you might want to go a little slow and steady on that. Let me get that fan out of the way, fan cable. And then we've got another one. It's going to be hard for you to see. It's right down here. And then finally, there's one way up here on the top. God, I hope you guys can see that. Okay, so there's two on the top, one in the middle. There's the post that I was mentioning before that holds the board in place for us. And then there's finally the last two. So we're using a total of 5 screws. These standoffs you can't see it because I'm too zoomed in. No, you can. There's standoffs all through here and here. Just ignore those. Those are for a larger motherboard. If you ever in the future want to put a larger board in, you will need those, so leave them alone. All right, that's the board installed. We've effectively built the computer. I guess I should probably unzoom that, right? Let's go back to the wide angle. Come on. Let's see, do I have a head? Yes, good, all right. One of these days I'll get a cameraman, you just wait. So what was I doing? So that's the bag that had the standoff, so I don't need that anymore. Gotta love a live stream, right? There we go. And we're done with these too. So those can just go over there. Motherboard box, we'll need that in a minute. This is that cover I was telling you about. I'm just gonna throw that right in there. And the next part of the build is the part that most people are intimidated by, and that's just the cabling, the wiring. It's really not a big deal. What we're going to do here is take this wire tie off of the power. Well, let me do this. Let's move this back. Getting ahead of myself. Let's move that. Let me come back around. Take this wire tie off. Remember what I said about wire ties. You know, if you have spare cables laying around, you have a drawer full of cables, it's good to use these wire ties, you know, on things that are outside of the computer. If you want to clean up the cabling on your desk and whatever. We've got this rear fan. I am not going to hook up the front fan. This is Arizona. It's very dusty. And this front fan is only going to bring dust in. It's not going to help cool the machine down at all. The rear fan is going to create a natural vacuum. There are people on the internet that want to talk about negative pressure and positive pressure. You're still going to get a lot of dust in your system either way. It's not going to make any difference in the actual performance of the cooling. And so the type of person that talks about negative pressure and positive pressure is a more advanced user. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, it's not that they're wrong, it's that it's extreme. I'm not teaching you how to build anything extreme here, so it doesn't need extreme cooling. Positive or negative pressure doesn't make a difference on a system like this. So when you hear advice on the internet, you have to consider the source. If you're looking for advice because you want to go hike a trail, I don't know that you need to take advice from somebody who has gone to Mount Everest. They need more extreme and more expensive and more elaborate equipment than you do. So it doesn't mean that they're wrong. It just means that you don't necessarily want to talk to somebody of that level if what they're telling you is you need what they needed. So it's your machine and you should think for yourself. Do your own research. Don't listen to me any more than listening to them, other than to understand why people are recommending certain things and understand where that makes sense. If you're building a system like this, there's no benefit to hooking that front fan up. The most common reason a computer support call comes in here in Arizona is a fan fails. And the reason that happens is because we live in a very dusty desert. The dust gets into the fan bearings and then it starts to make noise, and then the phone rings. My computer's making a weird noise. You and I know that a fan making noise is nothing to worry about unless it's the CPU fan. Or potentially a GPU fan. But generally speaking, that's, you know, the customer hears it and they think the world's ending. If you have a mechanical hard drive, it could be that. But this system is all solid state. So basically the most common reasons you get a support call is a moving part. So moving parts are mechanical hard drives and fans. That's it. So the more we can move away from moving parts, the more reliable things become. Also, the less power and less heat they generate too, which is interesting. All right, so getting back to our power cables. Let's just hook power cables up to everything, right? Start with this fan. The motherboard will power this fan and will control the fan speed for us. No reason to use fan controllers anymore. The motherboard will take care of this all for us. This motherboard should have a couple of fan headers on it. I see sysfan right here. Does it just have the one? It may only have the one. Another reason to only hook up one fan. By the way, the number of fans you should have, generally speaking, unless you're an extremist, is the number of fans is the most amount of fans you should have. Okay? When I see people trying to hook 6 fans up and they go, I only have 2 fan headers, that's because you're only supposed to use 2 fans. Yeah, you can force it, you can make it happen, But I really highly, strongly recommend that you do your own temperature tests with 2 fans, 3 fans, 4 fans. See if there's any difference. 9 times out of 10, people see no difference at all. So why have these parts that are going to eventually fail and cause you a headache if you don't need them? Not to mention the added cost of electricity. But I do enjoy when somebody sees my videos to police them and give me these exceptions. Well, if you know better than me, you don't need to listen to what I'm saying because you already know better. So thank you for policing my video. Here we go. So this is the large motherboard power connector. And I could just plug it straight on there, but I want to hide the cable as much as possible. This is something else a more advanced case gives you is cabling options to hide the cabling. Cheaper cases, not only can you cut yourself real easy on the edges, not only are they flexible and cheap and flimsy and echoey and noisy, the more expensive cases give you this option to run the cables back behind. We can bring that up through here, right? But now suddenly, you barely even see that cable. There's an additional 4-pin here that's got to be attached, and then that's just going to go on one direction. You cannot get this wrong. The clip is going to hold it in place, goes toward the outside edge of the motherboard. We're just going to line that up, and you just kind of push it and wiggle it, and you should hear it click, and you can give it a little pull. Should not fall off. That's on. Next, and again, I want to emphasize, this is a part of the build a lot of first-timers fail to do. There is a second power cable. It's going to go right up here. This is called CPU power. And if you look on your power supply cables, you're going to have one that says, well, at least if it's, I know on the Corsair power supplies and on the EVGA power supply, it says CPU right along the side. And on this power supply, we have 2 4-pin CPUs because some motherboards need 4, some motherboards need 8. When they need 8, as this one does, you just push them together. Once again, I can just plug that straight in up there, but the cable's going to look terrible. So instead, I'm going to run the cable out through the back. Right? I'm going to bring that up through here, and then right up into this corner. Look at this. It's a little bit of a tight fit sometimes, but be patient. Kind of play with it a little bit, coax it, give it a couple drinks. There we go. And then you should be able to reach in there and then pull that cable straight through. Check your motherboard to see where the clip goes. Clip, in my opinion, should always go towards the edge of the board, but Asus, I don't know what they're drinking over there, but sometimes they put it on the inside and sometimes they put it on the outside. I don't know why. So I'm going to put these 2 together, line them up, and then push it straight on. You'll hear it click. It's kind of weak, but it clicked. Look how clean that cabling looks. And we're going to tie this up a little bit later. In fact, I can even wrap this cable around the fan. Look at that. That helps a lot too, doesn't it? But I'll just tie it up anyway. Boom, boom. Now we've got to power up to the optical drive and power to the solid state drive. So looking at our remaining cables, I gotta wonder, will that reach? It's possible. It is in fact possible. How do I want to do that? I can either use 2, do I use 2 cables? Yeah, I've got 2. I could run there. Well, let's see what happens. Here's what I'm going to do. This cable's got 3 SATA power connectors. It doesn't matter which one you use. The only reason it's going to matter is in the efficiency of if I can power both things with 1 cable or if I have to use 2, right? The fewer cables I use, the easier my cable management's going to be. I'm going to run that through, and then I'm going to bring it up right next to the optical drive right here, and I'm going to pull it all the way through. And the very last cable, I am going to put that into the back of the optical drive. So now the optical drive has power. Now I'm going to see if that's going to reach. Is that going to reach the solid state drive? See what I'm doing? It does reach. Look at that. Look at that. You know what they do do you know what we do with the rest of these cables? We are just going to take a big old zip tie and we're just going to tie them down. I like to put them right down here. And that way it's easily accessible. This case has no window, so nobody's going to see it anyway. And I'm just going to use the holes. This case has holes on the bottom of it here. And I'm going to run a nylon zip tie through those holes to hold the remainder of these cables in. Look how clean that's going to look. We still have a little bit of cabling to go, but that's the power. I mean, we are done with power. Now, when I do these videos, what I often forget to do is hook up the SATA cables, right? So every optical and hard drive, any storage device needs power and it needs data cables. So back to the motherboard box. The motherboard comes with 2 cables. Most motherboards do come with 2. Some come with 4 or 5 or 6 or 8. The cheaper the board is, the more than likely the fewer of the SATA cables you're going to get. Each package usually contains 2. If you're going to add, like if we were going to add a storage device, if we were going to add a large storage, like a big terabyte, multi-terabyte hard drive, we would be short a SATA cable. And you'd have to stop your build, or you'd have to do that part later till you got another SATA cable. So be aware of that when you're ordering your parts. That's why if you're building your first computer, you probably shouldn't make it too complicated. And if you do, then don't expect to have it go, you know, perfectly the first time, in that there might be a part you forgot. It's not a big deal. Be patient. Go get that part and finish your build. Don't try and find a shortcut to it. Of these 2 cables we've got, one has a little bend on it. And that's the one I like to use on the back of the optical drive. So we're just going to grab that. We're going to plug it in back here. And that plugs straight in like so. And if I look on the etchings on the board, it says SATA 0 and 1 are here and here. So that means this should go on number 1 because the hard drive should be 0. And it's going to go right there. Now I will, when I do my cable management, I'm going to route this a little differently, but just to speed this video along. I'm then going to plug this SATA cable onto the remaining part of our solid state drive. And then that's going to go right below the one we just plugged in onto port 0, like so. Finally, all we have to hook up are the front USB and audio and power switch. And that's using these cables here. See, this cabling's almost done. Here you thought it was all complicated and intimidating, and you've been following along with me the whole time. Everything makes sense. Just handle one cable at a time, and before you know it, you're done. This USB 3.0 front port header, there's no other cable that looks like this. There's only one place it plugs in on the motherboard, unless your motherboard supports 2, in which case, plug it in either place. If it fits, it's the right place. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to look at where the port is on the board. So here it is. It's right here. That's our USB 3.0 connector. So I am going to just run this right in here like this. And there's a little notch on it, so it can only plug in one way. And of course there's a matching notch on the connector. And we'll just plug it straight on. Boom, we've just hooked up those 2 USB 3.0 ports. Whew. You need a break yet? Here is the front port audio connector. There is no other connector that looks like this. I suppose if you had USB 2, it kind of looks like this, but there's a little blocked hole, and it's in a different place than your USB. And that's so you can't plug it into the USB part. You can't plug the USB 2 connector into the audio port. The audio ports are almost always located somewhere in this corner of most motherboards, somewhere right in this little area. And right here, this white connector says audio, and I see the missing pin is on the bottom towards the back of the case. So I'm going to turn this back around. I'm going to grab this cable. I want to hide this cable as much as possible. And what I found is a lot of power supply, they put this hole here in a lot of cases. And if your power supply is short like this one, you can take a little shortcut and put it in right there. Then we can come back around, grab this cable, make sure that that block pin is on the bottom, right, towards the back, and then place it right on all those pins. You see I kind of wiggle it and push it at the same time. It's easy to only get it on one set or one row of pins, so you can feel it with your fingers to make sure that you're on both sets of pins. There, we've hooked up USB and we've hooked up audio. All that's left is power, reset, and the lights. So that means there's 4 cables left, and it's these 4. This is a good time to untangle them so you don't have to undo your work later to make your cabling look pretty. They're labeled accordingly. They're labeled as power switch, reset switch, power LED, and hard drive LED. These are all going to go at the bottom of the board. They're all going to go generally in this corner right here, and that's what this large connector is here. You can refer to your motherboard manual. If you have a crappy motherboard manual like the one this motherboard came with, you go to the manufacturer's website and you download the PDF, which is the full-blown manual, which will help you. You can also often see in little tiny lettering written over the pins what those pins are for. Generally, they all go in the same order, starting with the hard drive LED, and then above it the power LED, and then next to the power LED is the power switch, and next to the hard drive LED is the reset switch. That's usually the way the cabling goes. So why are there so many pins? Well, there's different kinds of power LEDs. There's 2 different kinds. There's also a speaker that we're not going to use because we didn't get one and we don't really need it anymore. And the speaker is the thing that goes beep, when you turn your computer on or whatever. So if you have a speaker later on, you want to use it, you'd use the 4 speaker pins. It actually, speaker only uses 2, but they're in a 4-pin connector. And all we need to worry about is that the positive side of anything that's an LED is on the positive side of the connector. If you get it backwards, the LED will not light up. The switches don't matter. You can put them on upside down. They still work as a switch. There's no positive or negative on any switch ever. So I'm going to run these cables right now. I'm going to take these cables and we're going to run them right through here. Right through here. Turn this around and we're going to pull this straight through. Again, try and keep everything nice and neat. And I'm going to look at this board, and yeah, we're going to start with the pins, the very first pins on the bottom row, all the way towards this side. And I'm going to start with the hard drive LED. So I'm just going to look, and these are labeled. I've got other build videos where I've got nice close-ups of this if you guys need any more clarity. This one says HDD LED, and there's a little arrow on the back side that shows me what side is positive. So the words HDD LED actually are going to be facing down, and that's going to go on the bottom first 2 pins horizontally, just like that. Above that, we've got our power LED. Power LED is split. Where is it? Here it is. On the Corsair 200R, they've decided to split this cable and separate the positive from the negative in case you're using a motherboard where they're separated by a pin in the middle. This motherboard will support it either way. So to keep everything nice and neat, make sure that the positive wire is directly over the positive wire of the hard drive LED. In other words, both positive wires are going to be on the pins closest to the edge. That's going to go right above it, just like that. Then I have, which one is this? That's power switch. I don't want power switch yet. I want the reset switch. This says reset SW on it. Again, up or down, doesn't matter. There's no positive or negative. Right on the next 2 pins, right beside the hard drive LED, the reset connector goes on. And the reason I want to put that reset on before the power is if I put the power switch on first, I won't be able to see underneath of it to see the pins to put the reset switch on, right? It's just easier. The last absolute final last cable, this completes our build. This cable, this is it, we're done. Is going to go right above that reset switch. That's it. You have built a computer. Ladies and gentlemen, you are done. Does it work? Well, that's the question, isn't it? Does it work? Before we clean up any cabling, before we think about installing an operating system, before we think about any of that, we need to turn the machine on and make sure that we get a power on self-test. We should see video come up. We should see some activity that ensures, it tells us, yes, everything you've built is correct, and now you can continue with installing your operating system. Like I said before I began this video, I am concerned that the CPU that I'm using is brand new and the motherboard may be old. If this doesn't post, it'll be because it needs a newer BIOS in my particular case. Let's see what happens. Keyboard and mouse, you're going to need those. All right. I have to go blind to you guys because I have to go use this monitor that I'm using now. Oh, I need a power cable too. Let me go run and grab a power cable. I don't like to use the customer's power cable. I like it to be nice and new, you know? I'm a little OCD that way, so I just have these cables laying around the office. And I'll just use one of these. So there's my power cable. I need a keyboard and mouse, so I'm going to steal the keyboard and mouse. This is a wireless keyboard and mouse dongle. I'm going to plug it in here in the back. Anywhere it's USB is fine. I don't want to waste a USB 3.0 port on a keyboard or mouse though, so. If you have blue USB ports, those are USB 3s. And if you have a combination of blue and black, the black ones are usually USB 2. And why waste a fast USB 3 on a keyboard and mouse? It doesn't make any sense. So I'm plugging that in there. Let me grab this monitor. Here we go. And let's move the monitor. If I can do this without knocking everything down, that would be good. Let's put it right here. And I'm going to plug the monitor into the DVI connector here on the back of the board. There we go. And then I'm going to do power. I always do power last. Make sure your power switch on your power supply is in the off position. Now that everything is hooked up, right? No internet, no printers, no USB flash drives. All I've got is keyboard, mouse, monitor, and power. This is a test. And I don't want to have to diagnose if it doesn't work all these other things I've plugged into it that could be causing the problem. So we want to start as simple as possible. Bare necessities. Flip the switch on the back of the power supply to on. Let me step around. Things are getting exciting. Are we ready? Is it going to boot? Is it going to post? What's going to happen? Let me get my keyboard and my mouse lined up. You guys can see the screen, yeah? Kind of a reflection. You can see the computer. I want you to see that the lights come on. We want to make sure that that power light comes on. It's behind the power button. And then I'm going to turn it and I'm going to make sure that the fans, I want to see this fan spin, I want to see that fan spin. I am not going to hook up the front fan. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Hello? Hello, computer? Hello? Well, that just took the wind out of my sail. Hold on. Let me make sure everything's plugged in right. So what happened when I spun it around, my power cable fell out. Switch off on the power supply, plug the connector back in, switch back on. Blah, 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 drama, 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 button. Light came on. This is going to initialize the optical drive. I hope I see something on the monitor. If I turn this, I should see the fan spinning. I do see fan spinning. And I've got a post. Post is short for power on self-test. And there's nothing to boot to. It's a brand new solid state drive. It's empty, right? There's no partition, there's no operating system. So it goes right into our BIOS. Now this is BIOS version, should be in here somewhere. System. This is BIOS version F21. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Google. You can do this too. And I'm going to type in GIGABYTE space H110M-S2H space BIOS. When the Google results come up, one of the first ones should be directing me to Google's website. You'll see below in the search result details of each link of where it's taking you to. I don't want to go to any other website but Gigabyte's. And I want to see if F21 is the newest or not. If there's something newer than F21, I'm going to put it on now before I transfer the operating system to avoid having any problems. A lot of people think you shouldn't update the BIOS unless you have a problem. I prefer to not have the problem to begin with. So that's the logic behind that. Updating the BIOS is very simple. It's not as risky as it used to be. It's very little risk at all unless you live in an area where you regularly have power outages. That's about the only risk you take. And if you have an uninterruptible power supply, also called a UPS, you eliminate that risk. Okay, so let me go back to the chat and see what you guys are saying. So just give me a minute here. Let me turn this back off. Everything's working. We built it right. You'll see those little errors that I've made with regards to like the standoffs not being in the right place to begin with had no effect whatsoever on our build. They didn't really slow us down by any meaningful amount of time. So slow down, enjoy your build. Don't be in a hurry, because when you are done, you're going to be so happy and excited you're going to want to do it again. So slow down and enjoy it. All right. So, what do you guys have to say about that? They're telling me F23 is the newest BIOS. Okay. Need more light in the case. Yes, well, the best thing I could advise you is to try and make your own YouTube videos like what I'm doing here. I've got big blaring lights blinding me right now, and it's still not enough light for you guys. Cameras need a lot of light. If you've ever been in a studio or you've ever seen anybody perform on stage, they often have to do this in order to see the audience. They could have 10,000 people. You can't see any of them because the lights have to be so bright for people to see you. You can't see them. Unfortunately, my YouTube channel is low budget. You know, I don't do this for a living. I just enjoy sharing my knowledge with the world, and I do the best I can. I'm sorry I don't have better lighting, but maybe that'll improve in the future, but I hope you get the gist of it. Let me look on this computer right now, and I'm going to do my Google search. Let's do Gigabyte. What did I say it was? H110M-S2H BIOS. First link it offers is the one I want. Then I'm going to go to Support. And under Downloads, where it wants to know what operating system I have, I don't have any operating system, so the drop-down box I want, usually it would say BIOS. I know Asus does it that way. So I'm just going to select OS All. And as I scroll down, it's offering me an audio driver, chipset driver. All the way towards the bottom it says BIOS. And it shows F23B is the latest BIOS. I'm going to go ahead and download that right now. I'm taking it from America. It's downloaded it, and I'm going to extract the zip file. So it's in my download folder on this computer I'm using to stream with. That's why I can't show it to you. I don't have screen capture set up yet for the same computer that I'm streaming from. But I'm going to extract the zip file into its own folder. And in that folder, there's a file called H110M-S2. There's a couple of files. There's an autoexec.bat. I don't want that. There's an eflash.exe. I don't want that. All I want is the H110M BIOS file. It's the biggest file. This one's like 8 megs. I'm going to grab a flash drive, which I have back here in my office. Somewhere back here in my office, I have a flash drive. Where is it? Here it is. You want to use a flash drive that is smaller than 8 gigs and is formatted in FAT32. You cannot use NTFS or exFAT. The BIOS will not see it. So let me plug my flash drive in. And let me copy that one file to my flash drive. Now, the flash drive does not have to be completely empty, but it's a good idea if it is, so that you don't make any mistakes. If you only have one file to pick from, you cannot pick the wrong one. And then when I'm done with this file, I will erase it off of the flash drive so it's not mistakenly ever attempted to flash some other motherboard in the future. And that's what happens. Somebody doesn't delete it. Listen, it's okay to delete it. If you need it again, for any reason, you go back to the motherboard manufacturer's website and you download it. And there's 2 reasons for that. One is so you don't end up with a flash drive that has 4 different BIOS files on it. You don't know which one's which anymore. And the second one is you want to make sure when you're going to update the BIOS that you're always using the latest one. And how are you going to know that if you don't go to the manufacturer's website and check? So I'm going to go to my USB drive. And we're going to paste that right in there. And I'm going to take, there's a couple of files. I thought this was a blank USB flash drive, but it has something on it. So I'm going to move that stuff off of it for now. And then when I'm done, I'll put it back. Then I'm going to tell Windows to eject the flash drive. Remember, you don't just want to randomly unplug a flash drive. Always tell Windows to eject it first. Then I can pull the flash drive. Let's get you back over here. Where are we at? There we are. Okay, so I got the flash drive, and I'm going to plug the flash drive now into any port here on the back of our new system. Let me turn this back around because I need to show you guys. I'm going to show you guys how I flash the BIOS. I'm going to grab my keyboard and mouse again. I'm going to put that back over here. Actually, I think I'm going to move this to this USB port down here, and I'll plug this in USB. I don't like them close together like that. It's just too hard to plug them in and unplug them. Okay, that looks good. And then I'm going to move my monitor again so you can see what I'm doing. Share this lesson with you and show you that it's very safe, very easy, and very painless to update a BIOS. You don't have to listen to all these people on the internet trying to scare you. Don't believe them. It's your life. Have your own experiences. Plug the monitor in. Power supply is on. Let me step around. So one of the things I'm stepping around are the lights. If you're wondering why I'm not just going right around the counter, I will trip over the cables and the lights will fall. How do I know that? Because I've done it. All right, we're going to turn this back on again. It's not going to behave any differently than it did. It's not going to have any operating system, and it's going to go into the BIOS, or it should go into the BIOS. And it did. Let me zoom in on the screen. Let's see here. There we go. And I'll just go down here. How's that? And I'm going to go over to BIOS. Should be an option in here to update the BIOS. No, it's not there. I'm just moving across the BIOS options here. There's usually an option to update the BIOS. And I don't see it. Advanced memory, advanced voltage, PC health, miscellaneous. I've been spoiled with the motherboards I've been using. This is what happens when you buy a budget board. This is, when you're just buying based on price, you're trying to get the cheapest price possible. It does make other things a little more difficult. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just exit without saving. And let's see if, sometimes if you hit the end button on the keyboard when it boots. There we go. So I was just pressing end as the system was starting. And we see the current flash is F21, dated 5/23/17. I want to update the BIOS. It's already selected. All I have to do is hit enter. And it already shows me the new BIOS on the flash drive automatically. So I'm just going to double click that. And it says you can do it fast or intact. I'm going to go with the defaults and do intact. Assuming you guys can see that okay. I'm going to hit enter. And you'll see it says it's updating the BIOS now. If I can get my head out of the way. Oh, my head's not in the shot. This takes about 2 or 3 minutes. It's actually a pretty fast, painless process. I haven't seen that kind of a progress meter before. It's something GIGABYTE has obviously introduced since the last time I've worked with their motherboards here. We're more than halfway done already. It's very important you do not interrupt the process. Make sure that just leave everything alone and hope to God the power doesn't go out and you're fine. This is why you don't upgrade the BIOS on a laptop solely on the laptop batteries. You want to make sure the laptop is plugged in. You don't want to have your battery die in the middle of an upgrade. That will be bad, okay? Okay. It's going to automatically reboot. 3, 2, 1, 0. There's our reboot. That message is from the monitor, it's not from the computer. Be patient. Be patient. It just turned itself back on now. It actually shut off. Look at that. Oh, dude, be careful. You don't want to update that BIOS unless you have to. Yeah, whatever, dude. It's fine. So it has no boot device. It never had a boot device. We haven't gotten that far yet. This is what it's supposed to do. Now, if I hit end again, where's that end button? Is it over here? I want to get back to that screen that had all that BIOS info. Now look what it says. Model name is the same. BIOS now says F23B, and our BIOS date is 7/6/2017. Now, was that anything to be afraid of? No, of course it wasn't. Simple. Let's turn that off. All right. Let's go back. Get you the wide angle again. There we go. I think that's going to work okay. All right. Take my monitor and move it back over to my streamer. That was the flash drive cap you heard fall on the floor. Let's put this back here. Why is that so wobbly? Oh, I see. I have a little rubber grommet on the top here that's kind of poking out. Let's just reseat that real quick. There we go. And plug this back in so I can see what you're seeing. There we go. I am done with this flash drive, and my cap, where did my cap go? It fell down here somewhere. Ah, there it is. I'm going to delete that file off the flash drive. And then I need to plug my keyboard and mouse back in to the streaming computer. Now, for those of you that have just joined us, we've just built this computer right here. Let me unplug it from power. This is our build. We still have cable management to do, and we still have the operating system to do. But we're going to do that tomorrow. For right now, in fact, actually, what I think I'm going to do, I'll do the cable management tonight. It's really boring to watch cable management. It's just grabbing cables and wire tying them. I'll do the cable management tonight, and then tomorrow I'm going to show you how I move the operating system over, and that'll be another live build. Now, let me take any questions you guys have. Also, for those of you just joining us, these are the parts. Let's see if I can use my little stream deck correctly here. These are the parts we're using. There they are. These are the parts that make up the build. I should be able to turn that off. All right, and so those are the parts that we started out with in this build. Of course, people that are going to be watching the stream, they can go back and start from the beginning, but for those of you live just joining us, that's what you've missed. Those were the raw parts. Video is included with the Intel chip. Once again, for those of you just joining us, a lot of Ryzen fanboys compare, Ryzen to Intel, but what you fail to understand, or what you're failing to consider is not everybody's a gamer, and the Intel chips come with built-in GPUs built right into the CPU. The Ryzen chips do not. So if you buy a motherboard that's Ryzen compatible, that like this motherboard has video outputs on it, those video outputs will not work because your Ryzen chip doesn't have built-in video like the Intel chips do. So for an office and a workplace, or even most home users, they don't need a discrete graphics card. If you're a gamer, that's a different story entirely. And I realize that a lot of the Ryzen fanboys are gamers. Nothing wrong with that. But for those of you watching the video, I want you to understand that there is a difference of priority when people are recommending parts. And the Ryzen chip is not cheaper if you then have to buy a graphics card than the Intel equivalent, which comes with graphics built in. Also, because the graphics are built into the Intel chip does not mean we have to use them. As you can see, this motherboard has a PCI Express slot. It's there to add a graphics card. If we want to turn this into a gaming computer, we can. So I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm simply clarifying and giving full disclosure to information that people do not willfully do on the internet. Why do you suppose they don't willfully do that? Because it kind of goes against their own argument. If your needs are the same as the person's that's promoting it, then what they're saying does hold right for you. However, in most cases, most people only consider themselves and think that what I need is what you need. And the beauty of building your own computer is that you get to build something unique for you. It's got to meet your needs, your expectations, your budget. And the satisfaction, the sense of fulfillment that you get from doing this, there's no words that can describe it. If you've ever done this, you know what I'm talking about. You can't watch any videos to learn how to ride a bicycle. You can't watch any videos to learn how to swim or to learn what the word hot means. Some things in life, there's no replacement then for experience. You have to get on a bicycle and fall down a few times to fully comprehend the profound definition of balance. You have to fall in love to understand love. I mean, that kind of love. You have to burn yourself to understand what hot means. You have to go in the water and flail around a little bit to understand how to swim. This is life, and you're not going to live it vicariously through YouTube or through Reddit or through forums and think it's the same thing. It is not the same thing. And I encourage you to put together a system build. Start out with something not too complicated and build it yourself. And then you'll understand the very definition of what I'm telling you. And you'll see the truth that what I'm telling you is something that words are not available to communicate. Experience is the only way you're going to know. Now, this computer does not, we only have 7 components here. We have the case, the power supply, the storage SSD, right? Or rather, and the optical drive are our storage. So that's 4 parts. Case, power supply, optical drive, solid state drive. And the motherboard is always going to be 3 components: RAM, CPU, and motherboard. Sometimes you can also add an M.2 drive. Sometimes you can also add Wi-Fi. I don't like Wi-Fi built onto motherboards because Wi-Fi is always evolving and getting better. And you can't take it off. I mean, you can always add more, but then you have to manually disable in the software, in the BIOS, the built-in Wi-Fi. What's the point of having it? If the customer wants to add Wi-Fi to this motherboard, they certainly can do that, buying a USB Wi-Fi adapter, or they can use either the 2 PCI Express 1 slots here. Technically, they could even use the big PCI Express slot, the times 16 slot up here if they wanted to. It'd be a waste of it, but they could. They can add a graphics card. Want to throw a 1080 Ti or a Titan X in there? Absolutely. System can handle it, no problem at all. You might want to upgrade the power supply depending on the graphics card. The more modern the graphics card, the less power you need. So 430 watts is probably going to be fine anyway, unless you got a Titan. But otherwise, 1060, 1070, even if the box tells you need 300, trust me, you're not going to hit it. You're going to be fine. But once again, this is where doing your own research helps rather than arguing with people that don't listen to you. I have a great discussion with Giorgio on the obsession people have with power supplies and how wrong they are, most of them. And there's some great power supply calculators out there that actually give you accurate power supply readings. I've got a great device here. Where is it? Where is it? I think I've got it back here. Oh, where did I put it? Here it is. I'll have to add a link to this. It's not in the video notes below. Right now in the video notes below, all the parts for the system are there. So if you order those parts, you can follow this video step by step, exactly the way I've shown it, and you can expect the exact same results. This is called a kilowatt. It's an energy usage meter. It sells for less than $20 on Amazon. And what you do is you plug this in the wall, and then you plug whatever you want to measure into it. So if you just take your PC, plug your PC in here. It's got an LCD screen that's going to show you actual usage. You don't have to argue about this anymore. They say the definition of a nerd is someone who will argue for days over the results of a test that'll take 10 minutes to complete. Is that you? So you don't have to argue. Plug this in, plug your computer in, and look at how much power you're actually using. On a modern computer, I bet you it's lower than you think it is. Even when it peaks out, it'll be a lower peak than you were taught to believe by people on Reddit and Yahoos on Yahoo. So $20, it's a sound investment than wasting hours of your time needlessly bickering with people when you're not listening to them and they're not listening to you, because that is the forums on the internet. Now, do you have any questions for me to answer? Gary, I want to buy a UPS and my power supply is 1200 watts. What UPS do I need? It doesn't matter how big your power supply is. That's irrelevant. It's how much power are you drawing. Get yourself one of these for under $20. See how much power draw you've got, and make sure that your UPS is, APC makes UPSs. Make sure that your UPS is going to adequately supply that power. Nobody has a crystal ball and can tell you how much power your 1200 watt power supply is actually using. Nobody can guess. Well, they can guess, but The only way you're going to know for sure, a little $20 investment like that, and you'll never have to wonder again. Carrie, you should get another monitor so you don't have to always change. Thanks for that. Never occurred to me that I should just take the $200. I'll go down to my vault, I'll pull out one of my gold bars, and I'll go buy another monitor so I don't have to change it out. These videos are free. You guys have, I do appreciate any financial support that you guys give, but I don't ask, I don't demand that you pay any money to watch them. So I hope you appreciate the efforts that I put forth in creating them with the tools I have to work with. Want to watch cable management? There's nothing you can really learn from watching cable management because all builds are different. The length and height of your case or the shortness of your case, the length of the cables that come with your power supply, depending on which power supply you've got. There's so many variations of hardware that no two cabling jobs are really ever the same. You just have to look at what looks good, You just use your eyes. If it doesn't look good to you, experiment with it. It's just some things you have to experience in life. And cable management's one of those things that you can look at cable management that's already been done to give you ideas, but watching how it's done is no rocket science. You can see what they wire tied and where they tied it. But those options are all going to be variable on the power supply, the length of the cables, the number of cables, the size of the case, and the cable management options of that case. There's no point in watching me do that. It's a waste of time. What about people using higher grade thermal compound? Higher grade thermal compound, and again, I want to encourage you to go and spend your money on higher end thermal compound and measure the difference. If you see a difference of more than 1 degree Celsius, assuming your room temperature is exactly the same as it was when you did your initial test and you're running it exactly the same, exactly identical, perfect every way through, which is almost impossible for a human being to do, that would be about the most you could expect. If you start your thermal measuring, your room is going to start to heat up the longer the computer's on. Depending on the time of day, your room may be hotter or colder. If you're worried about 1 degree Celsius, I cannot help you. A doctor can help you. Anybody who's worried about their temperatures, any normal user, this isn't the right place for you. We're here to help novices. Intel and AMD don't sell fans for their chips that cause their chips to burn out. There is nothing you need to do unless you are pushing the chip beyond its engineering design, in which case you're on your own. The thermal compound that Intel ships on the CPUs, fans that come with the CPUs, is exactly what Intel engineers have deemed necessary. Unless you are educated more than an Intel engineer, you should not be, in my opinion, second-guessing what the engineers have done. Because I've worked at Intel, and I've seen the wall of patents. It is a wall longer than my house of patents. There are some really smart people working at Intel and at AMD. It is not in their best interest to sell you a cooler that does not properly cool their components, because then they'd have all kinds of warranty issues and would cost them a lot of money. It'd be hard to sustain a business model like that. When you buy a car, do you change the radiator out and try and make it run cooler? It is a techno-hypochondria that is a problem with the person. It's not a problem with the computer. I've got a video, and I suggest you watch it, where I run a CPU without a fan, and I run it hard with, what's that utility called? Prime 95. Without a fan. Runs fine. It runs hot. So what? It runs just fine. Please don't try and fix problems you don't have. You shouldn't even be looking at what your temperatures are. Why would you even look? Are you looking for a problem? If your computer is randomly shutting down, it's time to start looking at what the problem may be, and temperature may be something to investigate. But trying to solve a problem you don't have is a waste of my time. If you want to waste your time, you go right ahead. But please don't involve me in that. I have things to actually get done. And there can be some great learning opportunities. And I strongly recommend that if you're interested in that, go buy 3 or 4 different types of thermal compounds. And while you're at it, try mayonnaise and toothpaste. Seriously, I'm not being sarcastic. And measure the cooling properties of each one. I think the results may surprise you. The main difference when you use a non-cooling, a non-thermal compound as thermal compound is it dries out real fast. So take toothpaste. Toothpaste has enormous cooling properties when it comes to using it as a thermal compound, but it dries out really quickly and it's worthless after that. But if you're interested in furthering your education along, you can take college classes in thermodynamics and you can learn how pointless all of this nonsense is when it comes to one thermal compound versus another. The heat transfer properties on a consumer-based CPU are so basic and simple. You're not putting a rocket into space here, folks, so you're way overthinking it. If you want something to work reliably for a long, long time, don't push it past its engineering design and use the components the engineers designed it to be used for. When you start going outside those lines and you start having problems, please don't come to me for help. You created your own problem. You solve your own problem. That's why you did that, to learn. There's no point in making, creating a challenge for yourself and then asking somebody to help you out of the hole you dug yourself in. You're the one that wanted to do it. You're on your own. Which video card do you think is the best bang for your dollar? It just depends what you expect the video card to do, the games that you play. Nobody's going to be able to really answer that question, because if you play really super high-end games on a 4K monitor or dual 4K monitors, there's going to be a different best bang for the buck than if you just want something for video rendering or playing in 1080, for example. So again, there's no right answer here. That's why there's not just one video card sold. Doesn't that make sense to you? So the best thing I would recommend you do is, whatever you're using the video card for, if you're playing Grand Theft Auto 5, go look and see what the best video card is for Grand Theft Auto 5. And if you're playing multiple games, go look and see which video cards in the forums people are using and recommending for those video games, and then make the decision that's right for you, your budget, your expectations. Nobody can tell that to you. Not at least without at least a 60-minute conversation with you to get all these details from you. It's research. Do your research. You'll come up with the answer. A great website you can look at is gpuboss.com, and you can look at all of the results of the tests, but they're general tests, right? If you want specific how it's going to apply to you as an individual, you need to look at the results of the specific software you're using to determine which one's the best value for you. And then, of course, what fits in your budget and what's best for that budget. Carrie, what's your opinion of PC Mover? Listen, if you want a computer that's unreliable, that's likely to crash, go use PC Mover. What PC Mover lets you do is something you shouldn't be able to do, and that is to take an installed application and move it to a different operating system. When you do that, you bring over all the problems. If the reason why you're replacing the computer's having blue screen issues, you're just moving the blue screen issues. It doesn't make sense. You always want to install software and copy data. It's possible to copy your Photoshop or Microsoft Office off of one PC with another with a software program like PC Mover. It's a gamble as to whether or not it's going to work. I'm not a gambler. As a businessman, when I walk into a client's office, they're going to pay me for doing a job once. If I have to come back and redo that job, I can't charge them for it. I don't gamble with my business, so I don't recommend PC Mover. As somebody who's a consumer, if you got time on your hands, it's not that important, you don't have the original software, I think you're better off buying new software than investing in PC Mover. That's my opinion. I don't recommend it. Always install software. Don't try and copy it. And if you do, set your expectations accordingly. It's a coin toss. If you private message somebody, how can you do it? On YouTube, you would click on the creator's name, which is usually below the video, and read your screen at what the options are. There's usually like a section that says About, and then there's usually like a little thing that says that you can message that way. All I can encourage you to do is read your screen. Too many people, they just glance and they look in, their eyes don't move. They look right in the middle and they go, I don't see anything. Well, it's right there off to the right. It's right there. It's like, Mom, I can't find the milk in the refrigerator. Well, did you move stuff around? Yeah. And then your mom comes in and goes, it's right here. It's right in front of you. Don't be that person. Is antivirus OC soft or is it MC soft? MC soft. EMSISOFT. MC soft. EMSISOFT. MC soft. EMSISOFT. All right, any other questions? What chipset would you recommend for music production? It depends on the kind of music production that you're doing. If it's, you can't really overspend when it comes to music production, I suppose. You know, X299 or X99, depending on how heavy you are into Thunderbolt accessories, if you need Thunderbolt 3. Which I don't think anything even happens for Thunderbolt 3. There's a lot of different kinds of music production. Somebody might have a band and they want to record an album, or somebody might have a synthetic orchestra in which they need to load lots of different instruments into memory. Or somebody may be doing EDM music, folks like Skrillex or Deadmau5. It just varies depending on what your needs are. Again, really no straight answer to that because there's not one definition of music. What is your take on mechanical keyboards? I don't know. It's like asking me what my take is on SUVs versus sports cars. It's just personal preference. Do you recommend advanced system care? No, I recommend you leave your computer alone. Stay away from system utilities unless you want to have problems. There is no software that you can download that can fix your hardware. These utilities like System Mechanic, Advanced System Care, in my opinion and in my experience as a technician, professional technician with over 2.5 decades of real life in the trenches experience, these programs cause more harm than good. Don't try to outsmart Windows. Windows 10 automatically maintains itself. Leave it alone. Don't shut down services. Don't try and turn off features that you read some article online. Let me put it this way. You do what you want to do, but please don't ask us for support to fix your problem that you caused. If you want a computer that's reliable and fast, leave it alone. Somebody in the chat is giving out bad advice again. The whole careful with CCleaner because it was hacked. The hack with CCleaner didn't affect any end users. It was targeting a couple of, like 5 tech companies. But if you guys would listen to the advice I gave you constantly over the years, it's that you never, ever, ever install CCleaner or any other system utility like that. If you're trying to clean your computer, why would you put more on it to do that? Does that make sense to anybody? I have said time and time again, if you want to use CCleaner, download the portable version when you want to use it. That way you're ensuring you always get the latest version. Then use it and then erase it. And when you want to use it again, go download it again. Do not install it. It's preposterous. I want to clean my car, so I want to put a bunch of stuff in my car that cleans my car. It doesn't make any sense. I'm going to install Revo Uninstaller. Why? You're going to, because I want to take programs off. So you're going to put a program on to take programs off? Do you hear yourself? There's a portable version of Revo Uninstaller. Download the portable version to ensure that you're using the latest version of it. Use it and then erase it. When you need it again, go download it. Life is really simple, folks. You guys are overcomplicating things and making things very complicated. And you're using your imagination to come up with all these bizarre, unfactual items about, well, CCleaner was hacked. It won't have, whether or not CCleaner was hacked had no impact on any end users. So the fact that it was is irrelevant. What do you think of Raspberry Pi? Raspberry Pi is kind of like flying a drone. You know, if you're into that, knock yourself out. It's a hobbyist thing. Not that it doesn't have useful application, but it's not what we do here, right? This is for the average, ordinary, everyday, common computer user. Raspberry Pi is more for people more technically minded that like little projects. And if you like that sort of thing, there's plenty of YouTube channels that have projects for you, and it can be a lot of fun and very educational. It's not what we do here. Do you work on laptops? I can do some work on laptops. So you have to understand is every laptop manufacturer has different models of laptop, and all the parts are custom made for that specific model. So it's not like you can take the motherboard out of one laptop and go stick it in another one, even if they're both made by Dell, for example, or HP or whoever. The laptop manufacturers can charge anything they want to for spare parts because there's no competition. So the price to get, say, a main board for a laptop is extraordinarily offensive. They don't want you to repair it. They want you to go buy a new one, and they're gambling that when you go buy a new one, you'll buy another one from them. This is sort of a universal thought process for laptop manufacturers. So if your laptop has a broken power jack or a cracked screen, I won't do those repairs. But there are techs who will. They'll go get you a screen from eBay and they'll solder. My time's worth more than that. Different people have different value for their time. So there are people who will do that. What I will do is I will upgrade, replace a hard drive, which is, in most laptops, pretty standard. And the same with RAM, as well as anything operating system related. That's all I do with laptops. Nothing else. If a laptop requires anything other than a power jack repair or screen repair, it probably isn't worth fixing, in my opinion. But it really depends on, you know, do you want to sink $300 into a $600 laptop versus buying a brand new $600 laptop, which is going to come with a new warranty. You don't have to wait for it to be fixed. You don't have to worry about it breaking again. And if it does, you might be out of warranty again. You might be putting good money after bad, and the laptop's not going to be worth $300 more just because you put $300 into it. At some point, you go, you know what? The laptop is more than 4 years old and it's broken. In fact, in many cases, if it's out of warranty and it's broken, time to buy a new laptop. And when you buy a new laptop, spend a little bit more to get one with a manufacturer's warranty, not an add-on warranty, but a manufacturer's warranty of at least 3 years. That way, you know you're good for 3 years. Technology moves very quickly, and a 4-year-old laptop battery is not going to be any good. So, you know, if you're going to be using a laptop as it's meant to be used, portably, You need a battery. Batteries are easily $100 and up on laptops. And then when you combine a new warranty, faster processor, more memory, bigger hard drive, maybe even a solid state drive, use that as your excuse to buy a new one. We live, unfortunately, in a disposable society. Carrie, have you ever had a fan of yours send you his or her computer to fix? Not through the mail, because it costs about $100, depending on the computer, $100 to $180 to ship a computer each way. So if a fan were to ship me a computer, you're looking at least $200 just in shipping cost. So the only one making money there is the shipper. I've had fans contact me locally, and I've helped them, and even shown a few here on video of people locally. And if you're local to the Phoenix area and you have a computer that you need repaired, upgraded, or you're looking for a new build, then please send me a personal message here on YouTube and we'll work something out. Outside of Arizona, unless you're willing to drive it here or bring it here yourself, or you're willing to pay a minimum of $200 in shipping fees, one to get it to me and then me to get it back to you, plus the cost of the repair, I'm open to it. I'm not sure it makes financial sense, but if you want to do it, I'm game. Well, in Q&A, you should install Windows. I'm not installing Windows. I'm moving the operating system from the old computer to the new one. And that'll be tomorrow's video. Just don't send the case and the power supply. That would cut down on shipping, I'm sure. It would also increase the odds of it arriving damaged. It would be very unwise to ship a computer without a case. Very unwise. And what if the case is shorting out something, or the power supply is bad, and I can't replicate the problem because I don't have those components? It's not going to be a very accurate repair. It'd be kind of pointless. It'd be like just putting your parts on a road trip. What time tomorrow? Probably about the same time, probably about 1 o'clock Pacific time. People asking about the Xenos build. Remember, the people who funded the Xenos build see the video first. I'm sorry, guys. That's the only fair way to do it. You'll have to be patient and wait. When am I going live again? For the 4th time? Tomorrow. Do hope you join me. My favorite build is your digital audio workstation build. Yeah, the digital audio workstation build and the Cosmos 2 build sure do have a lot of views. Once again, we should be live. I should be going live tomorrow. It's weird to say things and people ask me the exact same question I just answered. That's just really weird. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to get used to this whole live thing. I don't know if they weren't here when I said it or they weren't listening. And why does my screen look fuzzy? Something's wrong with my focus. Tomorrow about 1 p.m. Pacific time. When I go live, I like to go right around 1 o'clock Pacific time. I'm out of focus. How long has that been that way? That's weird. Well, it looks okay. It's not on my end. It must be the stream was in a low resolution mode for some reason. Let me crank. Yeah, I'm in. For some reason, it lowered my res down to like. That's better. If you ever see the video quality look really bad, check the little gear next to the video, below the video, and make sure what resolution you're seeing it in. Because if If it's below 720, it's not going to look good. Well, someone just contributed $20. Who was that? 24 Vipers contributed $20. He says, thank you for what you do for us. Well, thank you. I appreciate your contribution. Where's the Coca-Cola? Don't you drink it anymore? I am trying to cut back on the Coca-Cola. Do you think it's a good idea to mix old user PC parts with new parts? Oh, old used PC parts. No, it's never a good idea. The older parts are slower and more likely to fail. Remember, your brand new computer will only run as fast as the slowest part. So while you're saving money by carrying over that old mechanical drive, your whole system slows down anytime it has to access it. It maybe even slows down at boot up while it's waiting for it to register. So you can do it, and even if it works well, the first part statistically that's going to fail will be the used part. Love your pizza recipe. Tried it myself. Tortilla for crust is genius. Yeah, I think so. I like it. Glad you tried it. You know, this is a great example. You would never know what that tastes like by watching videos and reading forums about it. Until you actually make it, then you know. So I'm trying to emphasize that because there seems to be this attitude online that you can skip the experience and just read about it or watch a video about it, and it's the same thing. It's not the same thing. You can play flight simulators, but it is nothing at all like flying a plane. Not even close. There's no inertia, there's no gravity, there's no real sense of danger or excitement or thrill. You can watch a video of a roller coaster, which is totally different from being on a roller coaster. You know, there's no sensation. So I want to emphasize experience, and I want to encourage all of the viewers to do something. Stop sitting at your keyboard and do something. Take the information I'm giving you here and put it to work and empower yourself and feel that feeling of fulfillment. Feel that feeling of anxiety. Is it going to turn on? When it's your money you've invested in your work that you've put into it, you've got a lot more writing on it. You've got a lot more invested in it. It's a lot more emotional than watching or reading about somebody else doing it. What way would you recommend to start working as a PC tech? I would get a job at Best Buy, Geek Squad, Office Max, Office Space, Staples. One of those places where they're going to teach you, you get on-the-job training, that's the best. If you want to just jump into being self-employed, then just go find somebody who needs their computer fixed. That's the hardest part of being self-employed, is finding your customers. Once you find a customer, then you got to figure out how to solve the problem. And when you do that enough times, you're in business. What's the OS you use the most? Windows 10. All right, any final questions? I'm going to wrap this up here. I am losing a lot of light. Nobody wants to hire you unless you have experience. No, that's what lazy people say. That's what people say when they're looking for an excuse on why they're not getting a job. You need to practice your interview skills. You're not interviewing well. You need to have your resume looked at by somebody because you don't have a good resume if you're not getting in for the interview. Employers like to hire the cheapest employee possible, especially as techs, especially at Geek Squad. There are people there that have no business doing what they're doing. They're getting free on-the-job training at the expense of the customer, and the corporation's making a lot of money on it because they get paid very little compared to an experienced tech. Whenever you hear anybody complaining about, there's no work in my town, nobody's hiring, no, it's you. It's not stop looking for these excuses. Fix your resume, learn how to interview, and you solve your problem. I've been up in business for a long time. And I hear people go, I live in a small town and there's just no money to be made. And I hear people go, I live in a big town, there's just too much competition to be in business. It's ridiculous. Do you read the chat log after? No, YouTube does not. As far as I know, YouTube doesn't keep the chat logs. I'd like to. I can't even see the whole chat. I can only go up a certain distance back, like maybe 3 or 4 minutes back. After that, it's gone. What past jobs have I had? I've worked at Jack in the Box and Little Caesars Pizza and Olin Mills Photography, and I've worked at a fabricator. I've worked at SRP, the power company, the Department of Environmental Quality for the government. I've worked for the school district. I've worked for the college. I've worked for the University of Arizona. I'm sorry, Arizona State University. I've worked for Intel. I have worked for the other power company that's real big here in Arizona, APS. I've worked for Charles Schwab. There's a couple I'm probably missing. Newegg, I didn't work. This is a semantics thing. I never worked for Newegg. I work with Newegg. Newegg hires me just as any other client hires me. In other words, I don't clock in or clock out. I'm not an employee. I don't have benefits. I don't have sick time. I don't have health care. They're contracted to me like all of my other customers are contracted to me. Okay, so I'm going to be wrapping it up here unless there's any other questions here. I'd be happy to answer while we have a couple minutes. Have you done any other jobs other than computer repair? So again, I want to reiterate, I don't know if people aren't listening or they're just joining us. Olin Mills Photography, which I already mentioned. Jack in the Box, I already mentioned. Little Caesars Pizza, I already mentioned. As far as I know, those are not computer jobs. I worked for Domino's Pizza too. Of course, this was back in the 80s. There weren't computer jobs. Have you worked on a Packard Bell computer? I've worked on thousands of Packard Bell computers. Do you use anti-static precautions when building? That was covered earlier in the video, so when the video is done processing, this live video is done processing, it'll be available for you to go back and watch, and it's all covered in a lot of detail earlier on. So if you're just joining us, you just missed that whole part. Has one of the doggies ever screwed up your work? No. As you're getting older, do you ever feel you're getting burned out? Yeah. I mean, when you work as a tech, it's a little bit like a fireman in that people, when they call you, it's like an emergency. You need to come over. You need to stop everything you're doing and come put out our fire right this minute. And it's a great feeling, you know, you especially when the customer shows appreciation for it. But it does get old after a while. It gets repetitive, like it loses its shock value. You're like, oh, okay, there's a fire, okay, you need me to put that out. Yeah. That does tend to happen over time. And then the other thing is sometimes you deal with customers who just, they're never going to be happy. If you put a customer on a retainer, And this has happened recently. Customer says, why am I paying you? Nothing ever breaks. It's because I'm maintaining everything so it doesn't break. I'm doing everything I can to prevent that from happening. On the other hand, if everything keeps breaking, they go, why are we paying you? Everything keeps breaking. What do? It appears you're not doing anything with the way things are. So if everything's working, it's why do we pay you? And if everything's broken, it's why do we pay you? I think that's true of any service job, though. So that comes along with the job, and that gets old after a while. So yeah, a burnout, absolutely. But then that's why you just need to do something else for a little while. Get your mind off of it. Go play a video game, go watch some TV, go take a vacation, get in the car, go for a ride. Do something that has nothing to do with computers. Can I swap a hard drive from one computer to another without problems? I don't know what you can do. I can do that. Do you ever think you will retire from working on computers? Well, here's the problem. If I retire, I have no income. And I do like what I do. I really enjoy it. So I don't want to ever retire. I don't want to. What am I going to do all day? What's the purpose of my existence? To pass butter? Do you do networking as well? You have to. Nobody wants a computer that's not networked. You got to at least be on the internet at the very least. So yes, yeah. Have you ever built a computer for a person that has a reading disability? Yeah, I've built several of them. Visually impaired people, pretty common here in Arizona because macular degeneration does occur with age. And because we have large senior communities here, especially during the winter months, we have a lot of elderly folks who have severe macular degeneration. And for them, we generally get them bigger screens and bigger icons and help them as best we can. So it's pretty common. Even people that are completely blind, working with programs like JAWS, it's very common here in Arizona. I can't speak for any place else. I don't know if it's common everywhere. I think, I associate a lot of it to the elderly community, but a lot of people that are blind are not elderly, and so programs like JAWS are very helpful to folks like that. Please tell us about the SanDisk SSD model you've put in the PC. This is, there's Jimmy. This is a SanDisk SSD PLUS. I first used it in a Newegg video, which you can see the build video that I did for Newegg last year. And I was very impressed with its performance and the price. It's a very budget-oriented solid-state drive. I've only used about 4 or 5 of them, maybe half dozen. I haven't seen one fail yet, knock on wood. They're not quite as fast as the SanDisk, but they're also not as expensive. It's also really thin, so I had a customer with a laptop that needed one of those really super thin 2.5-inch drives, and I had to go with the SanDisk because the Samsung drive was too thick. Did you ever have someone who didn't want to pay? Of course, yeah. When you run into somebody who doesn't want to pay you, always make sure that they pay for parts up front. That's the bottom line. When somebody doesn't want to pay me, they have no warranty, and I won't work for them ever again. So in a way, it saves me money. I never let somebody owe me too much for that reason. So for example, if If a customer wants me to come on site, it's a business and they're getting charged $125 an hour, I won't go over $1,000 before they get a bill. And if they refuse to pay it, it's only my time I've lost. Any parts they will have prepaid for. I did a favor for an employee of a company that brought in their personal laptop, and I told them I would do the work for free. I'll just include it on the company retainer. I mean, it's good to have the employees on your side if they're talking about you when you're not there. So the employee brought in the laptop. It needed a hard drive, and so I put a hard drive in it for $60. And that was the bill, $60. I wasn't making any money on it. I brought the hard drive back, and the person was fired the next day. Never paid me. I lost $60, plus my time. So, you know, in business, you've got marketing. Whether you do billboards or commercials or any kind of advertising or business cards, flyers, you chalk it up as the cost of business. It's like marketing. $60 isn't a lot of money. This is, again, why people must pay for their parts up front. The employee wasn't mad at me. I didn't know they were going to be fired. They certainly didn't know. The bosses didn't know I was working on their personal computer. Not that it's the bosses on any of their business anyway. So it was a private transaction between me and the employee. The employee never paid me. It happens. And no sense crying over spilled milk. They've got no warranty. If you have any problems with it, you're on your own. Small claims court, it's not worth my time. I've gone to small claims court for other issues, but nothing for my business. I've never been to court where I've lost. I'll just tell you that. I've never been in court and lost. It's never happened. Proud of that. Because I know when I should pursue something and when I shouldn't. And if I pursue it, I'm going to win it. So what I'm going to recommend, if you're looking for any build advice, if you're thinking of building your own computer, you're not sure what parts to get, there's a Facebook fan page, Carrie Hulsman's YouTube, what is it called? Carrie Hulsman's YouTube fan page on Facebook. We've got volunteers there that'll happily recommend parts. They're going to ask you questions first, so they recommend the right parts that fit your needs, your expectations, and your budget. And then if you're building it and you run into any problems or you're having some issues and you're looking for, and I want to emphasize this, you're looking for free technical support, please use the Facebook fan page. That's what it's there for, and they'll do their best to help you. Keep in mind that there may be some problems that require turning a screwdriver or physically being in the presence of the computer, but if they can offer you, any helpful advice, they certainly will. And I encourage all of you to use that free service. These are volunteers. They don't have to help complete strangers on the internet. So please keep in mind when you're talking to them that they're doing this out of the kindness of their heart. They don't have to spend their time helping complete strangers. And I encourage you to take advantage of that and treat those people with respect, because if enough people start being disrespectful, we'll just shut it down. We won't do it anymore. But go to Facebook and use the fan page, and you can get free build advice and free support there. I highly encourage you to take advantage of that. When's the last time you worked on a computer that had Windows 9X, so 95, 98, Millennium? I don't know. More than 10 years. More than 15 years. I mean, if somebody contacts me, let me just say this. Before I work on anything, I ask the customer, what is it? If the customer tells me it's Windows 98, I refuse to work on it. So the job doesn't even get started. What is the best brand desktops to buy off the shelf? None. There are none you should buy off the shelf. You should build it yourself, save money, have the experience. Don't buy pre-built computers. They're junk. Every one of them is junk. Every single one. No exceptions. You can do better for less if you do it yourself. What's the oldest OS I'll work on? Whatever Microsoft supports. When Microsoft stops supporting it, so do I. Because when they stop supporting it, you don't want to get involved in that job, because it's a job you'll never be able to get away from. It will always continue to break. So stay far away from those kind of jobs. Hills Moving and Lawn Care says, I built my own computer. Thank you, Carrie. That's awesome. I bought a Toshiba laptop. Yeah, well, laptops you can't build. You have to buy a laptop. And of course, things with laptops, the laptops are prone to being dropped, stolen, have things spilled on them. So a lot of a laptop's reliability doesn't have a lot to do, well, it has somewhat to do with the build quality and the parts quality, but also in how it's treated. So again, if you're looking for any help with parts, you're looking to build a computer, you're not sure what parts to buy, use the Facebook fan page. It's called Carrie Holzman's YouTube fan page on Facebook. There are volunteers there that will ask you a series of questions to help give you the best advice to fit your needs, expectations, and budget. If you have any technical support issues, please go to Carrie Holzman's YouTube fan page, send them a direct message with your issue, and the volunteers there will help a complete stranger on the internet for free. Carrie Holzman's YouTube fan page on Facebook is available to all of you for free build advice and free technical support from volunteers that will help complete strangers for free. So is that your real hair? No, it's your hair. I just shaved your head and put it on my head. What kind of question is that? Whose hair would it be? Sadly, you have to repeat things over and over. Yes. Yes. I still don't quite know if it's because people are just joining us live or if it's because they're not listening. I don't know what else to do. What would you do? Do you still have your podcast? Yes, TechVets is alive and well. It's just Mike is busier than ever, as am I, and it's just hard for us to coordinate a time. We're certainly due for an episode. We're well past due for an episode, but there will be more. Pitch in and get a teleprompter. What do I need a teleprompter for? How's that going to help people listen? Sometimes during a 4-hour stream, people take breaks, so they come and go. Yeah, I imagine that's true. Absolutely. so you don't have to learn and read it in the chat. That's not what a teleprompter does. All right, guys, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. I appreciate you joining me today. I'll be back tomorrow, probably about 1 o'clock. We'll do the operating system transfer from the old computer to the new computer. And as a reminder, if you're interested in buying that old computer or the old laptop that I've shown in the previous 2 live streams, or you're looking at maybe wanting one of these old square LCD type screens, you're in the Phoenix area, drop me a line, drop me a private message on YouTube, and I will get back to you as soon as time allows. And they can avoid the landfill and can help you out and help me get rid of some of the stuff that's starting to collect here. So thanks again for watching. I'll see you all again tomorrow afternoon. At least I hope I will. And I will see you then. Bye for now.